Hello guys, today we are going to study Python if statement. Python condition if statements. Python for the user logical condition from mathematics. The equals, not equals, less than or greater than, equal to, greater than or equal to. These conditions can be used in several ways, most commonly in if statement and loops. And if statement is written by using the if keyword. As you can see here, we have example. We have the two variable a and b having their own assigned values, and we are using if conditional statement to print an output in which if the b is greater than a, so it will print b is greater than a. And let's see how this if statement works. The if statement evaluates a condition, an expression that result in true or false. If the condition is true and the code block inside the if statement is executed, if the condition is false, the code blocks and gets skipped. The indentation is also the major issue in the Python if statement. If the indentation is not correct, the whole conditional statement will lead to its failure or the error. Python relies on the indentation to define scope in the code. Other programming languages often use curly brackets for this purpose. Here we have an example of the error where this block of code was intended to run under this conditional statement, but it's running on its own, like out of the conditional statement. So it will raise an error. And see, we have got the error, and if we run it like this, we will get the output. Here we have the output. And multiple statement in if block, you can have multiple statement inside an if block. All the statement must be intended at the same level, and we can assign multiple if else statements that we want to print. Like here we have an example. If the age is greater than if the age is greater than 20 or equal to 18, so we can print the that you are an adult and you can vote. You have full legal rights. Everything that you want to print under the conditional statement, this is how you can do it. Using variables and condition. Boolean variables can be used directly in if statements without comparison operators. We can use the variables in the conditional if else statements without any comparison operators. If we declare any variable with a boolean, so we can print it without performing any sort of comparison operator. Python can evaluate many type of values as true or false in an if statement. Zero, empty string, none, and empty collection are treated as false. Everything else is treated as true. This includes positive number 5, negative number -3, and any non-empty string. Even false is treated as true because it is a non-empty string. So next we have the elif keyword. The elif keyword is the Python's way of saying if the previous condition were not true, then try this condition. Basically, we have the many possibilities to run a block of code. If the previous condition is not fulfilled, the other one will be compared with the others. Like here I have a an if statement and elif. If the if statement is wrong or the condition is not satisfied, so the elif will get this example a is equal to b. So the first condition is not true, but the elif condition is true. So we print to screen that a and b are equal. Next, we have the multiple elif statement. You can have many elif statement as you need. Python will check each condition in order and execute the first one that is true. We can understand with the help of an example where we have a variable called score and have its own value which is 75, and we have if else in this example the program checks each condition in order. Since the score is 75, it prints grade C. Because considering how Elif works, when you use Elif, Python evaluates the conditions from top to bottom. As soon as it finds a condition that is true, it executes that block and skips over remaining conditions. So when to use the Elif statement? Use Elif when you have multiple mutually exclusive conditions to check. This is more efficient than using multiple separate if statements because Python stops checking once it finds a true condition. Next, we have the else keyword. The else keyword catches anything which isn't caught by the preceding conditions. The else statement is executed when the if condition and any elif condition evaluate to false. In this example, A is greater than B, so the first condition is not true. Also, the elif condition is not true. So we go to the else condition and print the screen that A is greater than B. Else without elif, you can have an else without the elif. This creates a simple two-way choice. If the condition is true, execute one block, otherwise execute the else block. How else works? The else statement provides a default action when none of the previous conditions are true. Think of it as a catch-all for any scenario not covered by your if and elif statement. The else statement must come last. You cannot have an elif after an else. Complete if else change, you can combine if else to create a comprehensive decision making structure. Else as fallback. The else statement acts as a fallback that executes when none of the preceding conditions are true. This makes it useful for error handling, validation, and providing default values. Next, we have shorthand if. If you have only one structure to execute, you can put it on the same line as the if statement. Shorthand if else. If you have one statement for if and one for else, you can put them on the same line using a conditional expression. Assign a value with if else. You can also use a online sorry a one line if else to choose a value and assign it to the variable. Multiple conditions on one line. You can change conditional expression but keep it short so it stays readable. These are the example of the codes. Next is the logical operators and or not. And returns true if both statements are true, or returns true if one of the statements is true, not reverse the result. Returns false if the result is true. The AND operator is a logical operator and used to combine conditional statements. Both conditions must be true for the entire expression to be true. Here we have an example. The OR operator, the OR keyword is a logical operator and it is used to combine conditional statement. At least one condition must be true for the entire expression to be true. The NOT operator is a logical operator and is used to reverse the result of the conditional statement. Combining multiple operators, you can combine multiple logical operators in a single expression. Python evaluates NOT first, then and then OR. Truth, truth table for the logical operators, the AND, OR, and the other using parentheses for clarity. When combining multiple logical operators, you can use parentheses to make your indentation clear and control the order of evaluation. We have the more examples. Next is the nested if statements. You can have if statement inside if statement. This is called nested if statement. In this example, inner if statement only runs if the outer condition is true. How nested if works, each level of nesting creates a deep level of decision making. The code evaluates from the outermost condition inward. Multiple level of nesting. You can nest as many deep as needed, but keep in mind that too many levels can make code harder to read. Here is the example of the nested if works in logical operators. Sometimes nested if statements can be simplified using logical operators like and. The choice depends on your logic. Both approaches produce the same result. Use nested if else statement when the inner logic is complex or depends on the outer condition. Use and when both conditions are simple and equal important. Next is the pass statement. The if statement cannot be empty, but if you for some reason have an if statement with no content, put in the pass statement to avoid getting an error. The pass statement is a null operator. Nothing happens when it executes. It serves as a placeholder. Why use pass? The pass statement is useful in several situations. When you are creating code structure but haven't implemented the logic yet, when a statement is required syntax syntactically, but no action is needed. As a placeholder for future code during development, in an empty function or classes that you plan to implement later, as in development, during development, you might want to sketch out your program structure before implementing the details. The past statement allows you to do this work without syntax error. Pass versus pass versus commands. A command is ignored by Python, but pass is an actual statement that gets executed. Uh, you need pass where Python expects a statement, not just a command. Pass with multiple conditions. We can use pass in any branch of an if else statement. Pass in other context. While we focus on pass with if statement here, it is also commonly used with loops, functions, and classes.